All right, guys, everyone, welcome back to the Cult of Belial. I'm joining once again by Anton, and we're talking about some things we want to discuss in the video. One of the things we want to talk about today and focus on today is astral work, astral projection. Just sort of see what kind of sparks from there, and just let the conversation take its own direction. So, Anton, why don't you go ahead and start us out here with what you wanted to speak about on this topic?
So what I wanted to speak about on this topic is utilizing the astral temple and focusing more upon astral workings and your workings. If you're in a situation, a place where you have no privacy, you don't actually have the space for an altar, you may not actually have money for offerings, you may not be able to buy incense, candles, a chicken, a goat, whatever it is really. You can become adept enough in astral projection to where you can project to your own sort of little pocket dimension, a place that is your own happy zone, so to speak. When you become good enough at astral projection, you can literally shape landscape a lot of the time, unless it's already a dimension or place that is beyond your actual will or control, like the Qliphoth or the Sephiroth. It's somewhat like a lucid dream when you do this. When you master dreaming, you can actually change the landscape. You can do anything, sort of like Inception sort of style, like the movie. You need to actually build your own little castle, picture it, see it rising up from the ground itself, wherever your landscape may be, or however you choose your landscape to be. And you want to construct an altar in the astral, go as big as you want to go. You can make out of gold, all these sorts of things. And with the actual offerings, you create them in the astral. You make them out of your own energy. So these offerings are actually valid. They may not be physical, like the incense I have in the back or the candles, but they're created from your own energy. You're actually giving your energy to the spirits in this working. So the offerings are very valid indeed. And you can do full-on rituals in these astral temples. And they can be a lot more effective than the physical, so to speak. They will send shockwaves out through the astral that will actually affect the physical world around you. Say you do a money ritual or a money spell in the physical world, in your own temple. That will work. And if you do it in the astral, it will work as well. There is no, I forget the word, but there's no difference between the two in terms of results. It's all about how adept you are in the actual projection itself. Now, we get creative with this. I have a tree in my astral sort of garden that's near my temple that grows goats, chickens, these sorts of things. And I take these goats and chickens and sacrifice them in the astral temple in a big pit of fire. Get very creative with your thoughts in these astral workings. That is the key. The sky's the limit, and your imagination is the limit when it comes to this. This could also go hand in hand with how you create energy chi balls in the physical world. That is energy work, but it's also astral based. You're seeing this. If you can see it beyond the physical and get flashes of you actually creating these chi balls, you're seeing it in sort of the astral layer that is very close to the physical world, such as when one remote views. When you remote view, it's the astral layer that sort of just goes over the top of the physical world. There's many different layers to the astral, and many different levels. So that's how I sort of wanted to open this up at the moment.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. So I'm spacing real bad right now. I don't know what. Oh, yeah. So I guess what I'll sort of discuss is like, okay, how do we go about shaping an astral realm and an astral temple? Like, what does that look like? And when people talk to me about this, what I tell them to do, like, okay, one thing that you should be at least learn how to do and get an idea of would be like the visualizing, especially like physical objects, when it comes to energy work, you're not just visualizing the color and the shape of the energy, but you're also You want to attempt to feel the energy that you're drawing forth. And one thing that I recommend that people do, and this is something that helped me out a lot when I was learning how to do this, was I wanted to visualize something that I was already familiar with, right? So what I did was I used my glasses, because this is something that I see every day. This is something that I know really well, down to like really fine details, even the dirt on the inside where it touches my nose, the bends, the way that it fits on my face. Familiarizing yourself with that and then trying to recreate that in your imagination, it helps really boost uh, how deep in detail you're going to be able to control your projections, especially when you're creating an astral temple. Now, my first astral temple that I created, it was very, very simple. It was just a room, and it was something that when I projected there, I wanted to have something that I could identify right away and know I was in it. So my very first astral temple, I think, had like a checkered floor, and it had a table, and that was it. You know what I mean? And from there, you can just it's like Anton said, really the only limit that you have is your imagination. You know what I mean? Another thing that I think people should try to do if they're learning this for the first time, especially when you want to like project to a physical place. Um, if you enter a meditative state, a receptive state, relax your body, close your eyes, and try to recreate the room that you're sitting in as clearly as you can. At first, this image inside your mind is going to be dark. It's not really going to have any color to it. But this, I don't want people to get discouraged by this, because no matter how weak that visualization is, you're still interacting with it. You're still able to experience and influence things in the physical when you do something starting out like this, right? I think for me, a lot of the hurdle was actually believing that I was projecting into these places, right? Until I started like getting like tangible results and influencing the world around me in these projections, is when I was really like, okay, this I'm doing this, and there's no doubt in my mind now. You know what I mean? Um, so those are some things that I would recommend people start out with doing. And I'm going to share something that Azazel taught me too, to help strengthen your astral senses, right? So, I've got a candle right here. This is an exercise you can do. It's really simple. But you just want to hold your hand in front of the candle, feel the heat, right? You want to, take in the shape of the candle, the color that it's producing, the way that it flickers. And once that's familiar within the feeling of your hands, once it's familiar within your mind, go to a different room and recreate that. What you will notice is, if you can recreate the feelings in your hands, if you can recreate the image in your mind, eventually what will happen is you will be able to see in real time what that candle is doing, if it's flickering, if it's waving, if it's giving off any kind of smoke. Um, and as you're doing this too, you want to just explore some different sensations. You know what I mean? Incense smells. So you mentioned earlier offerings in the astral. So if you wanted to do an offering of incense inside of your astral temple, you want to familiarize yourself with that sensation, with that smell in the physical, and recreate it in your imagination. So when you're going out and offering those kinds of things to an entity that you're working with in your astral temple, they sort of like use your own physical sensations and imagination as like an interface to get that energy. Because, like you said, we're drawing up that energy, and we're actually creating those energies, and it's a substantial offering. Uh, and then, yeah, really from there, it really is what the confines of your imagination can recreate. Um, that's all I have on that. Anton, if you have anything to add, or where you want to go from here.
Yeah, I got some stuff to add. It's very interesting that you said your astral temple actually had a checkered floor. That's a very big Masonic thing I read upon recently, actually. It's very interesting coincidence that that was the actual floor for your astral temple. That's pretty cool. Um, with what you said about sensation, that's something I actually completely overlooked and forgot to mention. So thank you for bringing that up and discussing that in detail. With what you said about actually projecting into your room first or a place that you live, that's a very good step to start off with, and practicing the sense of astral touch, focusing on your astral senses. Go around, if you've got carpet or walls, etc. Try and actually touch them with your astral hands, with your actual body, and try to feel the sensation of the carpet, the walls, these sorts of things. Like you said with the fire, you should be able to actually feel the heat of the flame, astral smell. When you work upon these things, your actual psychic senses will become boosted. Some people actually smell spirits. A spirit has a certain scent it likes, and when it's around, you'll smell that scent. For Balfagor, it's not a very pleasant smell, but when he's around, I smell it. And where is that fucking smell coming from? Where is it coming from? And it boosts all these senses. When you do these sorts of things, all your psychic stats that make your ability stronger grow. You develop as a psychic being whenever you do these sorts of things. A big misconception with astral projection as well is that it's mostly without. When I say without, it's an external thing. A lot of people are focusing on projecting externally, right? But the old saying, as within, as without, it's a lot within. It's through your mind. It sort of goes within and then without, if that makes sense. It's very difficult to put into words, but if you've experienced it and been able to do it, it will make sense what I'm saying. So, with that said, focus on your mind first. Focus on breathing, relaxing your body, of course, and entering a trance state, then leaving your body. But when you leave your body, you will actually be entering a different dimension that's through your brain, through the inside of your mind, and you will be going externally outwards, forwards. A good exercise that I started off with when I was a bit younger, I think 3 years ago now, that really helped my remote viewing and astral projection was I'd message a mate and be like, "Do you want to try something?" I'd be like, "Yeah, cool." I'd be like, "All right, cool. Just sit where you're sitting, and I want to try and see where you are, what's around you, these sorts of things." And this was before my projection abilities were a lot clearer as they are now. And this was all with permission of the person, of course. And I try to see them in a remote viewing fashion, right? Not actually manually projecting. And at the start, the person would be sitting there and they'd be in the dark. It'd be like just the void almost. They're just sitting there. And I'd see bits and pieces sort of appearing around them. I'd be like, okay, you're in your room. Like, yeah, that's a given. And then I'd see shadows, the shapes of the objects that were around them, and I'd make out what those were, and then they'd actually appear in the projection, in the remote viewing. I tell them where stuff is in their room, what that is, how big it is, and they'd be like, okay, this is getting a bit more interesting. And another interesting thing is when I was seeing this person sitting in his room, I heard the word red. And I was like, you got something red around you, like a lot of red shit around you. He's like, I've got like 10 empty cans of Coca-Cola around me, and those are red. He's like, that's actually pretty interesting. And from there, it just really empowered and boosted my viewing abilities, and it all went from shadowy and grey and shapes to a clear projection of his room and his house. I was able to tell him what lights he had, where his different family's rooms are, and he was actually on the phone to another guy because he was playing, I think Call of Duty or something. They were actually playing together, and his friend was like, "Yeah, have him see where I am." So I went to where his friend was, and this time it was different because they had already opened up my senses this exercise. And I saw where his mate was, what he was doing, what's in his room, what he was holding at the time, and he was like sort of freaking out. And I had a feeling there was a third party in this meeting besides me and the other two people. So I said to them, is there a third person in that's listening to all of this, and they both sort of started freaking out because that third person in the Call of Duty party listening to all of this and sort of talking about it that they didn't mention to me. So when you do these sorts of exercises, they will open up your abilities and they will strengthen your abilities. It's like working out. When you start off, it may be a bit weak. It may hurt a little bit even. But the more you do it, the stronger that muscle will become, the harder that muscle will become, and the clearer your vision shall become.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's really cool. Uh, we also touched on this very briefly, but you mentioned that a lot of people think it's going to be an external thing. Um, so for me, I like to sort of like divide astral work up into like different sort of levels to it. You know, most people have this idea that astral projection is going to be full on out of body experiences 100% of the time. And for a lot of times, that's not the case, right? So the very start of this would be the remote viewing, where you're able to see a space, but not sort of interact with it. The next level would be a projection, where you see the space, your astral body is in there physically, and you're able to interact with the space. And then the full out of body experience, again, just it is exactly what it sounds like. It's what people mostly associate with the projection would be, okay, it feels like I'm there physically. I see things with my physical eyes, and it's like I'm there. You know what I mean? So that's you can train yourself to have out of body experiences like that, but most of the time, in my experience, I have to induce a state of like sleep paralysis in order to like fully leave my body. And even then, I am not very good at like fully leaving my body um, for an out of body experience like that. The times that I have done it have been outside of my control. It happened before I was practicing. It scared the shit out of me because I didn't understand it. Uh, it's happened a couple times since I started practicing, and again, it's really weird, you know. When you have a full out of body experience, things are just a little bit different. I remember staying the night at a friend's house, right? And I woke up paralyzed, and they weren't in there. I think they were working, but I was able to like roll out of my body and sort of walk around her apartment where there were like things hanging from windows that didn't exist, and me just sort of like moving these things and feeling them with my hands and exploring some of the premises before returning to my body. I have found that personally, for me, uh, more conscious states of projection, uh, not induced from sleep paralysis, is the most effective way for me to interact with the astral. Um, yeah, that's my experience. I was gonna say something, and it's not coming to me right at this moment. But Anton, if you have anything you want to add to that, you actually taught me a lot of this stuff, dude, and helped me out a ton. So I'd like to get your input on these sort of levels and the layers to it, if you could.
In terms of the levels and layers, I don't know at all about them. I don't think anyone actually does. It's something that the human mind can't fully comprehend. A lot of people do know a lot of these layers in depth, absolutely, and they sort of know the mechanics behind a lot of these things. But the overall complete big picture, I don't think anyone knows. It's a given with any spiritual endeavor or activity or psychic endeavor or activity. But with the actual levels, there's remote viewing, then astral projection, then soul travel. Remote viewing is sort of like automatic astral projection. You don't have to manually leave your body and travel there. You your astral double is already sent there via your will, and you are seeing through your astral double's eyes. seeing around the place, henceforth remote viewing. But you don't move around. It's just like you're a set of eyes that are looking through. The reason this can also happen is the theory of we're all one consciousness, right? And we're omnipresent and omnipotent. We are everywhere at once, just as the wind is, the ether is, the void is. And since we are that and one with that, we can see through that. That's one theory about it that I sort of agree with, but not fully. A lot of people can disconnect themselves from source and that all is one consciousness, which is a lot of what the left-hand path actually does, which is extremely empowering and stops the whole cycle of reincarnation itself and your soul being recycled in the end, which is a whole other topic that we can discuss later on. But it's basically willing your astral double to see somewhere without actually having to manually project there. Astral projection is you are projecting there. You're leaving your body in a energy body, an energy vessel that you shape via your will or your highest will. Some people don't get to choose how their astral body gets to look like. Some people adorn energetic armor that lays over their aura for protection, and you can actually feel the weight of this armor. You can feel the sturdiness of this armor. Some people have wings, some people don't. It all depends on where you're at in your spiritual path and your personal spiritual blueprint as well. But from there, you leave the body and you manually travel there. This can happen fast or slow depending on how you go about it. You can travel through mirrors, you can fly there, you can teleport there, these sorts of things. Sometimes it can be like that, and space and time just goes around you and you are there. You don't move through space and time in the astral, it moves around you, which I find is very interesting. That's the sort of more manual way to do it. Now, soul travel is like astral projection on steroids, right? You're not projecting somewhere in the physical plane where the astral and physical are sort of very close to each other, that sort of layer, but a different dimensional entirely, which is still connected to the astral. The astral is like a bridge to different dimensions, and the astral is like breathes air into them, so to speak. Henceforth, the element of air where astral projection corresponds with, and a lot of magic corresponds with. But soul travel is where you go to different dimensions, the Cliffoth, the Sephiroth, your own actual astral temple will be a pocket dimension that you've created, because that's how powerful we really are. Humans are extremely powerful, they just have forgotten for a long, long time. We're all sleeping gods. But with that said, when you dream every night, you're soul traveling. You're going to different dimensions. That's why when people dream, they're in places they don't actually recognize or have never been before. Sometimes it's an apocalyptic city with a lot of zombies and monsters running around, which is one I used to get quite often. Sometimes it's these beautiful places that are sort of like Olympus, the Greek gods. They look sort of like that. Some places are just completely strange and you can't describe. I've been to a few weird places where it was sort of like void-like. There was terrain, a landscape, but no actual sky. It was just dark and swirling energies and all sorts of stuff. And I walked past this one entity. It was really weird looking. He was all black and he had that gas mask with the thing there in the eyes. And as I walked past him, he had this clown music playing. And it got stronger as I walked past him, and we were just staring at each other like, what are you looking at, kind of thing. And the person I was with in the dream was like, yeah, don't look at him, keep going forward, keep moving. I was like, all right, whatever. But you do travel to a lot of different places. You will meet a lot of different entities, some nice, some not, some just generally creepy. It all depends on what your soul's doing or what the highest will is from the higher self. Now, the different layers of the astral realms sort of spread. I don't know too many of them, but the one that is closest to the physical realm is where you actually project to see where you are in the physical world. So you project into your room or to France to see the Eiffel Tower, New York, wherever. That is the layer that is the closest to the physical realm, right sort of where the veil is, so to speak, and you can sort of peer through it almost. Then the other ones branch out further and further to where it reaches soul travel, to where they are no longer layers, but breathe. And I use my hands because I can see it as I'm talking, but my hands sort of do what I'm seeing. It's very Italian of me, but they breathe into the actual realms, and it's like air. It just flows everywhere. The ether, the astral, it's the same thing. The elements of air. Henceforth, why Lucifer is the prince and powers of the elements of air. He rules over a lot of this. So that's sort of how I wanted to add on to that.
Hell yeah, dude. I do want to touch on the topic of incarnation cycles, but I don't want to get there yet. I have one last thing I'd like to talk about astral work before we get into incarnation cycles, and that is shape shifting. Once you get pretty good at projecting uh, and getting a feel for your astral body, you can then start shaping your astral body in whatever way you choose. Um, so one exercise that you can do would be to take an inanimate object. Uh, like just for example, I have this coffee cup right here, and to familiarize yourself with this object, and you want to transfer your consciousness to this object. And what I mean by that is, okay, this object has clearly defined borders. If you were that size, you want to feel the borders right there. What is it made out of? Okay, well, it's styrofoam, so it's a little bit rough, so you want to feel that. If it has, so this still has liquid in it. I want to feel the liquid in it. And not just that, but okay, from its perspective, how would I perceive the room that it's in? Okay. Once I get like how I would perceive everything as if I were this coffee cup, then when you start projecting into uh, different realms, okay, so like if you want to do an exercise in your astral temple, once it's created, if you want to take on the form of, say, an animal, you would do the same thing. If you want to take on the form of a lion or a wolf or a bear, you would want to familiarize yourself with the size and the shape of the animal. And a step further from that would be, okay, how does this animal behave? You know, you want to take on as many characteristics of the animal that you choose into your astral body. And then what you can do from there, if you want to project to someone uh, in this new form that you have, in this new form that you're learning, uh, people, especially like if people may not be perceive this if you're projecting to a person, uh, but some people, like especially if you're doing work within a group of magicians or witches, some people may be able to pick up on that. And that's a really cool thing. And this can also help you out with your baneful workings if you want to shape shift into a bird of prey and attack them with talons. Very excellent thing to do. And it will scare the shit out of some people. You know what I mean? Anton, do you want to talk about shape shifting at all?
Yeah, sure. With what you were mentioning about shape shifting into different animals, that reminds me a lot of spirit animals and animal totems. Uh, these energies and such of animals extend beyond the actual physical animal. They're very spiritual. There is a consciousness of the actual wolf, a consciousness of the snake, the bear, etc. If you can tap into that consciousness while you're shapeshifting, it will greatly empower the shapeshifting and what you can do with it. You'll adorn the powers of that specific animal in that moment of time. When I shapeshift, I don't usually shapeshift to animals. I shift into different things for different purposes, purposes, lycanthropic purposes, etc. I tend to focus on the feeling of that specific thing. Say, for example, the vampiric one, if I'm shapeshifting into that form, I will focus on the actual thirst, the hunger for energy, prana, and I will feel my astral double shape-shifting, the fangs growing, the wings changing, the feet changing, and that claw foot thing. And it will not be specifically skin, but it'll be just a shroud of darkness. But the figure of the actual beast itself will be the same, but it will be a shroud of darkness itself. And the hunger itself, focusing on how that thing would feel in that moment, really helps you in capture becoming that one thing. That's sort of briefly how I wanted to touch upon that. But another thing I want to talk about astral projection, shape shifting, all these things, is what you see in there is built from your mind and your perception. Imagine if you lived in a realm where there was no physical objects, no walls, no buildings, no beds, no laptops. What would you see when you project? How would it look? How would soul travel be different? It would be extremely different with what you see. The astral realm is shaped by your mind and your perception. Even when you soul travel to different dimensions, you may see palaces and buildings. But to spirits, there is no such thing as buildings, just energy. Your mind has just perceived that energy as a big building in a fortress, which it may be, has defense purposes, etc. But it's not literally a building. Same thing with astral weapons. They're not literally weapons. You're just wielding energies in a weapon-like state. So that's sort of where I wanted to leave that off at.
Awesome, man. So yeah, let's jump right into incarnation cycles. I think what we should start out would be like, okay, karma, you know? So everybody should be familiar with past life karma, past life traumas, and building up your karma good in this life, so that if your soul needs to reincarnate again, you're sort of not burdened by karmic repercussions. And I'm not talking about karma in terms of like, okay, if I do this spell, then it's going to come back on me. No, you're dealing more with cause and effect there. I'm talking about like actual deeds that you do in your physical life, and what we can sort of do. One, to transcend the incarnation cycle, and two, if there's anything specific that you know of or have experienced either in past lives, or some things that could help some other people out. So I'll let you go ahead and take the lead here.
Karma can come in many shapes and forms, typically in the form of lessons or fixing something that you did. Um, my own experience with karma would be relationship-based karma. Say you were with a lover in one past life, right? And something bad happened, and it's hard how to put it, but you had to fix what you did wrong in order for your soul to actually move on from the physical realm. You would reincarnate every time, and this is not just for this, but multiple karmatic attachments every time, till you found that person and fixed what you did. I managed to do this in this lifetime, not based upon past lives, but karmatic things that I had to fix that I had done in this lifetime, which the spirits really skyrocketed and pushed forward for me to move on from certain things and to get to where I want to be. You will go through each one of these things till they're fixed, until the other person has sort of forgiven you, so to speak. As Michael used to say to me, forgiveness is the key. This is where holding grudges, all these things can sort of bring these karmatic attachments and attachments to people that will keep you sort of in a cycle of reincarnation. But that's not the only thing that keeps one reincarnated. Your higher self typically incarnates for a specific big lesson. you probably won't know this. It's very rare that you know this. That's the whole reason of reincarnation. You have to go into it blindly and forget who you are and why you're here, and sort of do it autonomously with your higher self guiding you. Till you get it done, then you stop reincarnating or you return to source, which is where I spoke about separating yourself from source so you don't go back to being recycled. Um, but you come here for a specific lesson or a mission, so to speak. In a lot of my past lives, it was all about revolution, rebellion, helping those who are under tyrannical oppression and forces and teaching them their own power and to sort of wake up and rebel and initiating these sorts of things. And every incarnation I've had involvement with those things. Um, Sometimes you're sent here for specific reasons beyond learning lessons. Perhaps the lesson behind that could be learning to allow these things to happen, not always having to meddle with these things. That could possibly be an explanation for that. But this is just to give you an idea of why reincarnation can happen and why you may be stuck in the cycle of incarnation. There are ways to escape it, but they always come at a price, a big price. You can give a piece of your soul to a spirit, um, and they will hold on to it, and that will be linked to you. So when you die, instead of going through that cycle again and coming back here, you go to where that spirit remains and you sort of live there and you escape incarnation. A lot of the spirits that people call demons, the darker spirits, they are separated from source. They chose that so they don't have to be under control, so they don't have to be limited, and they can live in their own realm and rule. A lot of people may choose to do the same thing, but this comes at a cost. But question is that cost worth it? It's all up to how you see the deal that is laid in front of you.
Yeah, man. In terms of like escaping the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, uh, there are certain more right hand path oriented traditions that'll get you there. Specifically, what I'm thinking about is like theurgy, a lot of the Golden Dawn stuff. Part of what they walk you through is to get you into that place where you don't have to incarnate again. Now, I know that once you get there, once you're able to escape that, you can you have a choice really once you reach that point on whether or not you want to incarnate again, right? It's not one of those things like once you get it, you're good. You know what I mean? There's always the choice to come back and live another life. But in terms of the left-hand path, the goal is to empower ourselves to the point where we don't need a physical body. We don't need to return to source. We don't need any of that. We sort of live as our own beings, and there isn't a clear defined path to do that because again, a lot of what the left-hand path for me at least is you got to figure it out yourself, right? It's one of those things where like when you're on the right path, you just know. It's one of those things where you can get help from people like us. You can ask around from other black magicians, and they can sort of point you in the right direction. But you just won't know until you do it yourself, right? Uh, one of the things that I have learned in this incarnation is like, okay, my past life experience personally has been a lot of like educational, right? It's taking in a lot of how the world works and reaching to the point where I'm at now, where all these sorts of lessons that I've experienced in the past, one, uh, like specifically lessons in this life, I feel like I have got a lot of that out of the way rather quickly. And I'm at a point where, okay, I want to share this and try to help out some other people. Uh, and I don't know if I will be born again or anything of that nature. I just know that what I'm doing feels right. And whatever your path may be in your spirituality, uh, I want you to try to dig down deep to find it, right? There's, I mean, there's got to be tons of ways to do it. If you want like the surefire way to do it, again, theurgy, uh, Golden Dawn stuff, those things will get you there. But uh, it's a lot more fun, at least in my experience, to sort of find your own way, right? It's really empowering. There's a lot of self-discovery. There's a lot of pain involved with what we do, but you'll have this feeling where it's like, okay, I know I need to do this, and I won't be stopped. You know what I mean? For me, that's that's been my experience, and I don't know how much of that rings true with you, Anton, or with anybody watching, but that's just what my heart feels. You know what I mean? So if you want to touch up on that, feel free to.
Interesting. That's what you said. What your heart feels. Usually, that's where the higher self's will comes in, not through here, but through here. Um, which is why a lot of people should be connecting to their higher selves, not just spirits. You will find your own personal sort of reason why you're and why what you're doing, your own personal power, your own personal path, which is a part of what we do. Absolutely, there is a lot of pain involved with this. Well, that's all part of the process, as with any spiritual process or system that's out there. It's not all love and light. Um, I agree with what you said that nothing can stop me or you in what we do. You're either born with this or you're not. And you can get into this, but it may not suit you and it may end up destroying you. Whereas those who already had a connection to this in different lives or realms beyond this get into this in weird circumstances and find themselves becoming versions or incarnations of their highest will in this realm and living out their highest will and escaping this place. That's sort of how I see it. You become your best version through this. And there is no final form. It's constant evolution, self-improvement, be bettering yourself. And because of that perpetual force that is that never-ending evolution, there is no stopping this train, no matter what happens, because any chaos or blockages that get in your way, if you go about this correctly, in this path correctly, and I throw that word correctly loosely because there is no really correct way out there. Those things won't be able to stop you. They'll just turn you into a bigger, badder force of nature than what you were already before you met those things that try to get in your way. So next time your life is in ruins, you face blockages or hurdles in your life, and you think about stopping what you want to do, stopping your dreams, stopping your ambitions that make you happy, bring you inner peace, or fulfill your highest will. Think of this message that I'm sending out there and think about how you can break through those things and make them benefit you.
Awesome, man. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I was gonna say one last thing, but it's not coming to me right away. I think I think the only thing I was really gonna say was like one thing that'll help you out with this is like stay in the present moment because really the only moment that we know for sure is real is here and now. And this will air out a lot of the difficulties we have like in our minds and stuff. You know, when we worry about things that haven't happened yet, or we're worried about the future, or we have regrets about the past, you know, that sort of takes us away from the present moment. Um, when you stay focused on the present, a lot of things just become clear. Uh, and then you can take steps and sort of shape your future from there. Uh, but that's all I really have to speak about. Anything that we spoke on today. Anton, do you have any final words that you'd like to say?
Um, Nothing other than I agree with you. Focusing on the moment really is a lot less stress upon the person and helps you sort of see what's actually really happening. Never look back and only glimpse forward on the horizon and focus on how you're going to get to that horizon. That's all I have to say about that. So, other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. Well, that's a great place to sort of end the video. Thanks everybody for joining us this week. I hope you all have a blessed day or night whenever you're watching this. And we hope to see you active in the group. And we hope to see your growth and power rise and conquer.